The lush green hills of Chenjejo district are peppered with treacherous rows of tea estates. This belt is the economic pulse of Toro. Tea is largely grown at high altitudes with a chill climate around the Lake Victoria Crescent, the lower slopes of the Rwenzori and the western Rift Valley. Tea was introduced by the Royal Botanical Gardens of England and planted at the Botanical Gardens in Entebbe in 1900. Later, in 1914, Europeans and Asian private owners introduced tea in the Toro region. This simmering cup of tea that is harnessed through these lush green plantations is today part of the cultural psyche across the country. Tea also serves as herbal remedy to build immunity and fight off inflammation. Uganda is endowed with a comparable soil, altitude and climate compared to its neighbors in the region. It receives plenty of sunshine and abundant rainfall. Tea today is the second largest agricultural export commodity, trailing coffee. In 2017 and 2018, tea and Uganda, $86 million having also averaged $76 million annually over the last 8 years. By the end of 2022, Uganda is expected to earn $134 million from tea exports. Tea production is characterized as black, green and instant and is available for consumption in 6 main varieties based on the oxidization and fermentation technique applied. The tea market has been segmented by form, product type, distribution channel and geography. By form, the tea has been segmented into leaf tea, CTC tea and other forms of tea. By type, the tea has been segmented into black tea, green tea, a fermented tea, herbal tea, and other types of tea. The black tea segment is holding a prominent share. However, the maximum growth is estimated for green and herbal flavored tea due to the awareness about health benefits associated with them. Consumption of carbonated tea drinks is a new trend in the tea industry, which is further fueling the growth of the tea market. Most of Uganda's tea is sold through Mombasa Tea Auction Center. Due to low quality, Uganda's tea continues to fetch low prices. The low quality is largely attributed to low altitude, poor post-harvest handling methods, and limited tea clones mix. According to the Tea Brokers East Africa Limited, in 2017, Uganda auction market price at Mombasa was about $1.85 on average as compared to Kenya's $2.98 and Rwanda's $3.2. The price disparities are as a result of variation in quality between Uganda teas and the rest of the countries.
Uganda currently is the second largest tea producer in Africa. After Kenya, we produce about 85 million kilograms. Kenya produces about 530 kilograms per year, million kilograms per year. Rwanda produces about 30 million kilograms per year. But if you see for Uganda, in terms of our earning, we are not even close to Rwanda because of our quality. So our quality is still the least in East Africa, and that affects our earning as an industry and as a nation. Yet we have the capacity to match Kenya. Kenya receives about 1.2 billion US dollars in terms of revenue from tea. Yet we have more arable land for tea than Kenya.
We are producing 82 million kilograms of tea in a year, where every hectare is yielding less than 2 tons in a year. And this is a crop which I understand very well. My gardens go all the way to 4 tons a year when they are very well looked after. But those who are not helped by a regulated environment don't apply fertilizer, our quality is not controlled, and we earn less. So we are losing revenue as a country, we are losing income as smallholders. Even the processors themselves are not making a very good deal. Uganda tea sells at a price which is about half of Rwanda.
I don't know how many of us were born by then,
So why is Uganda, which has East Africa's largest arable land, playing catch-up to Rwanda and Kenya? In 2005, the National Tea Development Policy was drafted by the Agriculture Ministry to provide strategic direction for tea subsector production and productivity. In 2016, the ministry in charge of trade drafted a policy focusing on tea trade development. In 2018, the Prime Minister directed that both these drafts be consolidated in one whole, making this the maiden comprehensive national tea policy. Could the tea policy recalibrate the country's strategy to improve the quality of its tea and earn more foreign exchange?
The tea farming was on a very low scale, and that environment didn't require regulation because it was government in the industry and a few big investors. In the 1960s, government deliberately decided to popularize tea growing among Ugandans, and that's when the sets of regulation, the laws governing tea were crafted. One was to set up smallholder tea growing, and that was the UTGC Act. And it was guiding how farmers should relate with tea factories owned by Uganda Tea Growers Corporation. Another one which was overall was Uganda Tea Act, which set up a tea authority.
You see, tea earnings depend on the quality. You may have a lot of production, but with less quality, you earn less. So the tea policy will go along to regulate the industry, regulate the competition, regulate the quality. But this is not the only thing that it will regulate. One, it will put commitment on the side of government in terms of investment in tea, extension, processing. We still need to improve our processing technology and capacities. At the moment, we have a lot of tea, but with less processing capacity, so we lose out. The other one, it will hope bring all the stakeholders together and then have a common voice in terms of approach. Perhaps also create our own a tea auction center. At the moment, we rely on the Mombasa tea auction.
So recently, from 1986, when the NRM government rejuvenated the industry, and specifically when the government changed the macroeconomic policies, government companies were sold to private investors, and the liberalization was introduced. Everyone is free to trade freely. So our old laws became irrelevant because what they were controlling had changed. So our two laws were repealed in 2006, and rightly so. But now, when government popularized tea growing again, the current government, and we have majority of tea gardens in Uganda owned by smallholder farmers, and we have tea factories owned by investors, the relationship between the two is not regulated.
So what is lacking is sustainability in extension services. You find someone learns from an institution. He doesn't translate the theory to the practicability of anything on the ground. So that is not, it does not need a deliberate policy.
Despite its impressive performance, the tea sector is faced with a number of challenges, among which is the lack of an elaborate institutional and governance framework. Consequently, government has found it difficult to coordinate and organize value chain actors to maximize Uganda's potential in tea. Tea is one of the 12 prioritized commodities in Uganda's Vision 2040 and the Second National Development Plan. It is envisaged as a tool to fight poverty through its ability as a source of employment to households, especially in rural areas. Currently, close to 80,000 farming households are involved in tea production, and it supports over 150,000 skilled and unskilled workers. Approximately 1 million people directly derive their livelihood from tea growing. Presently, tea estates produce 40% of the tea, while the smallholder tea growers contribute 40% of the total acreage. The limited initial investment required, combined with the relatively low risk of crop failure, the auxiliary services created around the factories, the steady all-year income, and the market linkage in retail trade, transportation, and consumption have all made tea growing an attractive activity to smallholder farmers. Despite the good performance and its socio-economic importance, the tea subsector is replete with many challenges along the entire value chain. Key among the many include the lack of a comprehensive national tea policy, low research funding, and poor quality of planting materials. For several decades, the tea subsector has not been guided by any policy of the national development agenda. This has a negative effect on the development of the sector in terms of development programs of the tea subsector and budget, as it is difficult to mobilize resources without an explicit policy with clear objectives and functions of the various stakeholders.
It is properly captured and it is clearly carved out.
Experts believe that a favorable policy environment for investors, improved funding for tea research, and the provision of extension services could lift Uganda's tea subsector to greater heights. The tea subsector is replete with low production, as many farmers are skeptical of joining the sector because tea is a monocrop. Once tea is planted, a farmer may not practice mixed agriculture. This implies that growing tea does not only need a stable land tenure system, but it may have major short-run implications on food security and household incomes as a result of the long-term lag years between tea gestation period and production, which lasts 3 years. Some smallholder growers further assert that they do not own the land they cultivate. Large quantities of land belong to the absentee landlords, hence smallholder farmers are not able to expand tea production nor undertake long-term investments as required in tea growing. Tea is majorly a labor-intensive activity, requiring many workers to pluck tea by hand during the harvest season, but the effects of rural-urban migration, low pay to farm laborers, poor working conditions, and poor social amenities in the rural areas have been driving many laborers from the tea farms. Many of the large estates have reverted to using mechanized methods which pluck tea indiscriminately, as opposed to the 2 leaves and a bud method preferred by tea connoisseurs. This has led to variations in tea quality, hence fetching lower prices at auction houses.
The development of the institutional framework of the industry in this country, whereby farmers and factories will relate in a more organized way, is going to see, and the strengthening of agriculture extension, the strengthening of tea research, the right varieties, introduction of specialty clones for specialty teas. All those collectively will see a farmer generating more from the same acreage.
The high costs and power outages sometimes interrupt the procedure of withering, crushing, fermenting, drying and sorting of tea, which requires 14 to 16 hours of uninterrupted power supply. Standby generators are proven to be an expensive substitute. As a result, the tea factories use food fuel as a substitute in the event of power outage. This practice has led to degradation of environment and low rainfall in tea growing areas. Research is a crucial input for tea development. However, tea farmers in Uganda are not well organized to fund activities which aim to improve planting materials, quality, post-harvest handling, value addition, and control of pests and diseases in the subsector.
If a field is poor, you don't get quality tea. And for you to improve the quality of the field, you should feed it very well with fertilizers. At the moment, a 50 kilogram bag of fertilizer costs about 250,000 shillings. Okay? Now, that is unaffordable. It's unaffordable by so many smallholder farmers. Now, what it means is that if a farmer cannot afford the fertilizer for his garden, I will get very poor tea at the factory, and the product will equally be poor.
As a result, the tea sector has had limited access to prime domestic and global markets. Uganda's tea has continued to fetch low prices, resulting into low incomes to farmers and other actors. The contribution of the tea subsector in terms of foreign exchange earnings and jobs has stagnated over the past 3 decades. Direct investments to the subsector, both foreign and domestic, have remained low, while some actors have been forced to abandon the tea. The low-quality Uganda's green leaf is largely affected by poor harvest and post-harvest handling practices because of lack of regulation and standards of harvesting at farm and post-farm. There are, however, other biological and natural factors such as altitude and the variety of teas being grown in Uganda, as the seedlings and clonal cuttings are of poor quality. Uganda teas are sold by factory origin with the absence of branding. Brand development for Uganda teas would be an important market tool for better and consistent prices that are predictable. In order to maximize export revenues for Uganda teas, there is need to explore branding Uganda teas, especially for direct market sales at regional and global markets, which can lead to improved sales.